It was Nevada, early summer of 1992, out on the test site where they kept the old blast tunnels sealed and quiet. I was a staff sergeant on a simple escort run. Nothing special, but the deeper we went, the more things felt off. Air too clean. Lights aimed down like someone wanted our eyes controlled. And every so often, the ground gave a slow pulse like something below was paying attention. I didn't get it then. Took me a long time to admit what we walked into. That mission wasn't routine, and we sure as hell weren't alone down there. So before we continue, please make sure to like and subscribe to support the channel and comment down below where you're watching from. Thanks. I was 33 that summer. Staff Sergeant Daniel Rohr, Security NCO, nothing fancy. I had a clean jacket, steady hands, and the habit of writing everything down before lights out. That's why I remember the details. People like to forget things from that place. I never could. We were in Nevada early summer out on the test site. Heat sat over the flats like a sheet. Distant hills looked burned. Nobody talked about the old detonations, but every now and then you caught the smell of stale chemical dust in the wind. Our orders sounded simple enough. Escort detail for a medical team. Routine underground maintenance in one of the older tunnels. Nothing about the job felt routine. My squad was small, good men, mostly squared away. Sergeant Mark Harlan rode shotgun in the lead truck, older than me by a stretch, blunt, always pissed at something. You listened when he said his gut felt wrong. Never met anyone with survival instincts like his. Specialist Louis Lau Ortega handled the radio. Skinny, talkative, liked to joke because silence made him twitch. Good at his job. When things got rough, he shut up fast, which I always took as a warning. Private First Class Deshaun Miller was new. Sharp kid, eyes always moving. Wanted to impress, but kept his voice low. You could see he watched the rest of us to copy how things were done. Then there was Lieutenant Evelyn Cross, our liaison officer for the mission. Blonde hair pinned tight, polite but cold. Never raised her voice, never answered anything straight. She read from cards during the briefing like she didn't trust her own memory. I never saw her eat or drink, just stood there, hands folded behind her back, eyes scanning the room like she was counting exits. The real odd ones were Medical Team Alpha, black and gray badges, no names, no unit patches. They moved like people who trained hard, but not like soldiers. Their boots were too clean. Their bags were sealed cases with no markings except plain stenciled numbers. They said little, didn't even try to make small talk. Whole group felt wrong. Our mission brief was short. Cross told us, escort the medical personnel, provide security only, no touching equipment. Stay on designated paths. No photography, no wandering. When Ortega asked what the maintenance problem was, she said, environmental check. Older tunnels need inspection, said it without blinking. Every morning we ran the same routine. The convoy rattled out from the barracks. 3 trucks moving through fenced roads that cut the desert into grids. The heat shimmered off everything. Guard shacks at each checkpoint. Badge scans, clipboard checks, fresh filters issued even when yesterday's looked new. They logged every radio, every flashlight, every canteen. No wasted motion. No jokes from the gate crews. The fence sector looked dead, but it was busy in a quiet, controlled way. Workers moved like they were following tape lines only they could see. Nobody smoked. Nobody leaned on anything. They stayed focused, eyes down, mouths shut. Once we reached the entry station, we loaded into a short elevator that groaned like it was older than all of us put together. Peeling paint, panels half rusted, old radiation warning stickers hanging off by the corners. The elevator always smelled faintly of metal polish and something else, like cold air blown through a hospital. It dropped us a couple 100 feet, then opened onto a junction. Tunnels branched out in 3 directions. Yellow paint on the floor. Old signs bolted to walls that looked like they hadn't been touched since the 70s. Most of the lamps were the usual dim yellow you saw in old underground places, but some had been swapped. Newer ones, whiter light, harsh, pointed straight down instead of outward, made shadows fall in tight rings under your boots. Cross always said the same thing before we stepped off. Stay en route. Follow my pace. We ran head counts, checked radios, checked filters. Ortega tested the channel twice because sometimes his radio let out a faint click when he keyed it like it was trying to reach another network. Harlan told him to quit messing with it. We walked the tunnels in slow patrol formation, keeping the medical team boxed in. The air felt too clean. Underground spots always carry dust, old rock smell, stale dryness. Not here. The air almost stung your nostrils, pure and cold, like it had been scrubbed by something stronger than filters. One of the medics carried a wrist gadget. No buttons, no screen, just a faint hum like a tiny engine trying to idle. He tapped it now and then and nodded to the others. They didn't explain it, and Cross ignored every question about it. Days passed like that. Escort down. Hold position while the medics opened wall panels or scan vents. Escort back up. Convoy out. Repeat. The men settled into it, though none of us liked the silence down there. I kept my notebook in my left cargo pocket. Every night I logged what I saw. Tunnel signs, times, tools. The medics used little things. Habit kept my mind straight. By the third day, I started noticing the first thread of wrongness. It was small, easy to ignore if you weren't looking. The tunnels didn't match the old map I was issued. A sign over one junction read C17A fine, but the next sign read C17A Delta. That wasn't on anything I'd been given. When I asked Cross, she said, "Old renumbering. Ignore it." Her tone told me to drop it. Medical Team Alpha kept their eyes forward most of the time, but every now and then they angled their bodies away from certain corridors. Not big movements, just slight turns like avoiding a smell. Once when the lights flickered, one of them murmured, "Keep helmets down if the lights shift." Said it soft like he didn't want Cross to hear. I logged that too. No underground place is ever silent. There's always dripping water or humming cables or the ring of old machinery somewhere far off. These tunnels had none of that, just controlled ventilation and our boots. Sometimes I felt the faint vibration underfoot, not steady like a generator, more like a pulse, a far-off thump, irregular like something distant shifting its weight. Cross said it was part of a filtered air trial, claimed the lights and clean air were new safety standards, said the medics were monitoring particulate. Most sounded believable. The first real thing that shook me came near the end of the week. We passed a maintenance hatch halfway open. Someone had been working on it. Behind it, I expected to see old wiring or pipework. Instead, I saw new concrete, fresh sealant, and a corridor that did not exist on any blueprint. Clean walls, no dust, white light spilling out like it had been built yesterday. Cross saw me looking. She shut the panel with one sharp motion. "We stay en route," she said. That was the moment I knew something lived down there besides us. And whatever it was, we were guarding it, not maintaining anything. By the second week, the medics stopped pretending to be normal. They never had name tapes, but now they stopped even acting like they belonged to any unit. They moved together tight, carrying those sealed cases like they held sensitive cargo. No labels, no hazard markings, just blank shells with numbers stenciled on the corners. One medic checked his wrist device every few minutes. That hum it gave off wasn't electrical. It sounded too clean, too steady. No screen, nothing to read, just a pulse in the air around it. When he tapped its side, the hum shifted tone. I asked about it once. He didn't answer. Tunnel signs made even less sense. We'd moved down a corridor labeled C17A, then hit another marked C17A Delta, then one with a symbol I couldn't log because it didn't match any shape I knew. My map didn't help. It showed straight halls where reality bent in angles we didn't take. The lighting was all new, brighter, aimed down to keep our heads lowered. When I asked Cross again about the renumbering, she just said, "Old system. Ignore it," same flat tone. She didn't even glance at the signs. The medics had strange habits. Whenever we passed certain side tunnels, they turned their bodies slightly as if shielding themselves. Not dramatic, not fear, more like avoidance. They never looked directly into those passages. Their shoulders tensed when we neared them. One of them whispered something once. "Keep helmets down if the lights shift." Said it barely above breath like he'd been told not to warn us but couldn't help himself. I logged that too. The air stayed wrong. Too clean, not dusty, not stale. It felt filtered to the point of sterility. My nostrils burned after long shifts. Miller mentioned getting headaches. Once Ortega rubbed his eyes and muttered, "Feels like I'm breathing inside a freezer." The tunnels were too quiet. No dripping water, no echo from far machinery, just the steady hum of controlled ventilation and our boots hitting concrete. Every now and then, a faint vibration passed through the floor. Irregular, almost like something deep beneath us shifted slightly, then went still again. Cross said it was an airflow correction. Didn't match the rhythm. Didn't convince anyone. I felt the unease building in the men. Not fear, not yet. Just tension. The kind that creeps up when you know you're not being told something important. Harlan walked with his jaw clenched, checking corners a little longer than he used to. Ortega stopped joking by midweek. Miller asked more questions but swallowed them before they left his mouth. I didn't blame him. I wanted answers, too. On day 9, one of the medics stopped mid-stride, checked his wrist device. The hum dropped to a low tone. He nodded to the others. They adjusted their formation, keeping 2 of them on the left side of the group, like protecting something unseen. Cross didn't react. If anything, she sped up. "Stay close," she said. Her voice stayed polite but harder. We kept moving past a T-junction where a set of doors had been welded shut. Fresh welds, clean, no rust. Someone didn't want them opened. Above them was another sign that didn't match anything. C07 Omega, not on any sheet I'd seen. I wrote that in the notebook later. Every detail mattered. One of the medics, tall one with a shaved head, flinched when he accidentally faced a vent. Brief. Not big, just a twitch. Then he pulled his collar up like something had brushed his neck. I asked Cross if we needed environmental masks. She didn't answer. Sometimes the lights flickered. Not a normal flicker, not bad wiring. They shifted angles slightly, just a hair, enough to make us dip our heads instinctively. The medics always reacted first, lowering their chins like it was a rule. Harlan saw it too. He muttered to me, "That's not faulty lights." We started rotating security positions to keep the men alert. I did radio checks more often. The signal stayed strong, but now and then, Ortega said he heard a faint click at the end of a transmission, like someone else listening. He tried to track it. Nothing solid. End of the day, after we escorted them back up, I wrote everything down. The new signs, the shifts in behavior, the medic's body language, and that damn vibration. I didn't know what it meant, but I knew it was wrong. You learn in the Army to trust your instincts when the environment doesn't line up. 3 days later, we passed a service panel pulled halfway out of the wall. Inside was newer wiring than anything around it. Fresh clamps, clean bolts, no dust. Something was being added down there, not maintained. I was starting to think we weren't guarding a problem. We were guarding a secret, and the medics weren't doctors. They were handlers. The tunnels didn't feel abandoned. They felt managed, curated, monitored. That evening, when we were heading back toward the elevator, I noticed another odd thing. The faint vibration struck again under my boots, but this time it came in 2 pulses. A short one, then a longer one. Not like machinery, not steady, more like awareness. Almost like whatever caused it reacted to us walking. I didn't tell the men that part. Miller asked, "Sarge, you feel that?" I said, "Probably just pressure change." He didn't buy it, but he nodded. Cross checked her watch, though it didn't look like any watch I'd ever seen. No face, no hands, just a dark plate with a faint line across it. She tapped it once, then said, "Keep moving." We stepped around another junction. That was when I noticed a new sign taped to a rusted one. Fresh print. No aging C17A Delta 1. Nobody acknowledged it. When we reached the elevator, the medics grouped together, keeping us behind them. Not tactical, more like habit. Their cases were held tight against their chests. Cross stood near the controls, stiff the way people stand when they're waiting for a specific moment to pass. Nothing happened on the ride up, but the air felt colder than before. Not temperature, just a feeling like stepping into a room right after someone else has left. When we reached the surface, the sector workers barely looked at us. They moved with the same quiet rhythm, checking badges, logging equipment, ignoring the sweat on our faces. That night I opened my notebook and stared at the page. The words started stacking up. Extra corridors, strange hums, avoided spaces, wrong signs, the medics' warnings, clean air, downward lights. It all pointed to something they didn't want us seeing. The last line I wrote that night, tunnel behind panel, new concrete corridor shouldn't exist. I had a feeling the worst part wasn't what was down there. It was how quietly they kept changing the layout. The first hit came fast. No warm-up, no warning. We were halfway through a shift change, standing near a junction while Medical Team Alpha unpacked their sealed cases. I was doing a radio check with Ortega when every radio on our hip spit static at the same moment. Sharp burst exactly a few seconds, then clean again. Ortega blinked at me. That wasn't us, Sarge. Before I could answer, the Geiger counter clipped to one medic's belt, kicked into high chatter, loud, jumped straight into danger levels. Then just as fast it dropped to 0. Dead calm like nothing happened. The lights flickered next, not on and off. They shifted angled downward, snapping into a tighter cone. The beams pointed right at our boots. All of us flinched. The medics didn't. One of them said quiet proximity reaction. No shock in his voice, just stating a fact. Cross stepped forward. Stay in formation. Don't move off route. The medics were faster than us. They packed up their gear in seconds like they'd rehearsed this 100 times. One kept checking that wrist device. The hum had changed pitch. Lower, thicker. He tapped it twice, nodded. I pulled Harlan aside. You seen anything like that before? He rubbed his jaw. No, but I heard something last night. What kind of something? Breathing. He didn't blink when he said it. Down below, slow like it was sleeping. I stared at him. Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't believe it. Thought it was air moving. He glanced down the tunnel. Now I'm not so sure. I didn't want the others hearing that. Fear spreads fast in places where you can't see the sky. So I told him, keep it quiet for now. He nodded. Then the whole tunnel shook. Not a quake, not rolling ground. Just one deep metal thunk from somewhere far below. Heavy solid like a massive door slammed shut under our boots. The noise carried through the walls and up my spine. Miller froze. What was that? Cross answered too fast. Pressure adjustment. Nobody believed her. A moment later, another vibration rolled up through the floor. This one wasn't mechanical, it wasn't steady. It was heavier, slower, like something down there noticed us and shifted slightly. Ortega whispered, that doesn't feel like a generator. I told him, stay focused. But my throat felt tight. Medical Team Alpha pushed us forward, not by force, just by presence. They moved in front like they needed to get somewhere. Their eyes stayed low. Their shoulders were tight. For the first time since meeting them, I saw real concern. Cross's radio buzzed. Not a normal call tone, a coded pattern. She stepped aside, pressed it close to her ear, and listened without speaking. After a moment, she said, copy, in a low voice, then turned back to us. Nobody goes off route again, she said. No exceptions. She didn't look angry. She looked scared. We moved faster after that. The medics guided us down a different path than usual, still marked as C-17A, but the side doors looked newer. The concrete smelled fresh. More signs taped over older ones, more welded access points. The men kept quiet. Even Ortega didn't say a word. Miller stuck close to me, breathing through his nose like he didn't trust the air. Lights flickered once more behind us. I didn't turn. Instinct told me not to. Harlan walked at my shoulder, hand near his weapon. Even though we weren't supposed to draw inside the tunnels, when we reached the elevator, Cross tapped her strange watch again. The line across it glowed faintly, then dimmed. The doors opened without her touching the controls. The ride up was silent. Nobody made eye contact. At the surface, Cross dismissed us like nothing happened. Same time tomorrow, get rest. We walked back to the trucks. The desert sun didn't make anything feel better. Miller wiped sweat off his neck and said, Sarge, if this is maintenance, I'll eat my boots. I said, keep it professional, we don't start rumors. But inside, I knew he was right. I wrote that night longer than usual, tried to get every detail down. Radios failing in sync. Geiger spike, lights adjusting like something triggered them. The deep metal slam. The second vibration that felt alive. I wasn't trained for weird. I was trained for hazards, patterns, practical threats, and whatever happened in those tunnels wasn't random. It had timing, sequence, response. Something down there reacted to us being too close. I checked my notes 3 times, didn't like the picture forming. On the last line of the page I wrote, if today was the first disturbance, the next one won't be small. The morning after the disturbance, I found Harlan in one of the old terminal rooms near the entry station. The place was empty, dust on the desks, dead screens on the walls. He had pried open a side cabinet using an old access card he said he forgot to turn in. Inside were storage reels and printouts dating back before 1970. He handed me a stack. You're going to want to see this. The documents weren't polished reports, more like raw notes, technician logs, old security briefings, all handwritten or typed on fatting paper. The language kept circling the same terms. Non-human intelligence, containment stability, indirect observation protocols. No one used the word alien, but they weren't talking about chemicals or radiation either. Something else lived under those tunnels long before we rolled in. One line stuck with me. The entity reacts to human density and direct visual attention. Another, observe indirectly. Avoid direct exposure that matched the medic's behavior, that matched the angled lights, that matched every uneasy warning we'd been given without explanation. I looked at Harlan. These from an old test. He shook his head. Some of these logs predate the big tests. Means whatever's down there wasn't built by us. I felt the weight of that in my chest. We hadn't found something. We had built around it. We heard footsteps outside and shoved the reels back into the cabinet. I slipped a few pages under my vest. Just enough to prove I wasn't imagining things. Cross didn't notice when we rejoined the formation. Or maybe she did and she didn't want a scene. That day, Medical Team Alpha acted different. They moved with purpose, not routine. They asked for fewer guards underground even though our orders said full escort. Cross backed them up. We're adjusting schedules. She said too much personnel slows operations. I didn't buy that. They wanted fewer people down there and not because of space. So I staggered our presence, sent Miller topside for surface checks, sent Ortega to help inventory supplies, sent half the squad above ground at weird intervals, not enough to raise eyebrows, enough to thin our numbers below. The men started sleeping worse. I heard them shifting in bunks, sweat in the sheets even though the AC ran cold. They woke fast if someone spoke their name. Silence got under the skin, even above ground. There was something about the quiet that didn't release you. During one of our shifts, we passed a sealed door we'd seen many times. Heavy, bolted, old. Now it had frost on the bottom seam, thick enough that Miller crouched and scraped a bit with his glove. Cold front on the other side, he asked. There's no cold front underground, Harlan said. The air around the door felt wrong. Too still, too cold. Ortega backed up a step without me telling him. Cross kept walking, pretending not to notice. Then we heard it, not breathing this time. Not the heavy vibration. A sound like slow, careful scraping. Long pause between each stroke. Metal or stone, hard to tell. It came once, stopped. Echoed faint but clean. Nobody spoke after that. We just kept moving. Later that shift, we stopped near the same old terminal room where Harlan had found the logs. One of the screens flickered even though it had no power. Green light flashed once. A line of text appeared. Containment stability 78%, cause human presence. No keyboard, no power, no input, just the message. Miller stepped back. What is that connected to? A sensor. Don't know, I said, and don't guess. Cross came around the corner, saw the blinking text. Her face tightened. She walked up, pulled the power cord from the wall. Even though dust covered it from years of disuse, the screen went black. Stay focused, she said. Terminal glitch. None of us believed her. We kept escorting the medics. They opened more wall panels. Inside them, I saw more new material. Fresh welds, shiny metal. Some cables weren't standard. They weren't bolted or taped. They looked grown into the walls, not installed, like someone shaped the tunnels instead of carved them. The medics scanned readings with the wrist device. They'd look at the small hum it made and nod among themselves. Their faces stayed calm, but their eyes moved too much. Watching corners, watching vents, watching the ground every few hours, the vibration passed again. Not strong, just a reminder. Like something big adjusting in the dark below, changing posture, responding to how many of us were near. Even the air felt tense, too clean, as if something deep filtered it before pushing it upward. By day 13, the squad's tension reached a point I couldn't ignore. Miller asked me straight, Sarge, what are we guarding? Because it's not a maintenance issue. His voice wasn't disrespectful. It was scared. Ortega kept rubbing his thumb across the radio casing. He said, every time the vibration hits, I swear I get a click in the headphones, like something trying to grab the channel. Harlan didn't joke. He didn't talk. He stepped lightly like the floor might answer back. I knew I had to keep the squad steady. Panic underground gets people killed, but lying would get them killed faster. So I told them the truth I could manage. Something's down there. Our job is to keep the medics alive and follow orders until we know more. It wasn't enough, but it kept them from cracking. End of shift. We headed toward the elevator. The frost door had melted a bit. Water pooled near the bottom. No sign of heat, just gone. As we passed it, the vibration rolled through again, slow and heavy, enough to make dust fall from the lamps. Cross whispered something to the medic beside her. Couldn't hear it, but he checked his device, then nodded with a grim look. At the elevator, we lined up. The air got colder for a second. Human breath hung in front of our faces. That shouldn't have been possible down there, not with all the ventilation. When the elevator doors opened, I felt something off in the shift of pressure, a sign we were closer to the source than before. The men felt it too. No one said a word during the ride. That night I opened my notebook again, wrote down the frost, the scraping, the logs calling it non-human, the unstable readings tied to us, the medics changing formation, the cold air, the message on the dead screen. Every detail pointed the same direction. We weren't maintaining a system. We were disturbing something that didn't want us there. By the middle of the third week, I knew we had to cut numbers underground. The logs were clear. The stability warnings were clear. Every vibration lined up with our head counts. More bodies meant more reaction. More reaction meant the whole place felt ready to crack, so I made the call. I rotated half the squad to surface duties. Told Cross I was balancing readiness. She didn't question it. Maybe she already knew why I was doing it. Maybe she was relieved. With fewer of us below, the tension eased. The air felt less tight. The vibration didn't hit as often. Even the medics looked calmer. I wrote in my notebook, stability up when numbers down, confirmed. But I also knew we were flying blind. So I used a spare encryption card and sent a short off-channel message to Surface Command. Not in Cross's chain, straight to higher. What are we actually guarding? Stability concerns, request clarification. I expected a reprimand or silence. I got a reply 10 minutes later, not from my battalion, not from the site commander. It came from something called oversight. Message was short. You weren't cleared to see the old files. Follow instructions and you go home. That was it. No signature. I stared at the radio. Harlan read the look on my face. What they say, they know we found something, I said, and they don't want us poking anymore. He nodded. Figures. I keyed the radio again. Need truth to protect personnel. What threat are we managing? Silence for a long minute, then another message. Maintain distance. Avoid direct observation. Do not escalate human presence. Continue supporting medical team. It told me nothing and everything at the same time. Cross found me 5 minutes later. I don't know if oversight called her or if she just saw something in my expression. She pulled me aside while the medics set up their equipment. We need to have a conversation, Sergeant, she said. Good, I told her, because my men are walking blind. She didn't waste time, didn't sugarcoat. Her voice stayed low so the others wouldn't hear. This isn't maintenance. It hasn't been maintenance at any point. Something exists below these tunnels. We didn't bring it here. It wasn't discovered recently. It's older than the expansions. I let out a breath. Non-human, she didn't nod, didn't shake her head. Classified, but yes, not us. And the medics, they're not medics, she said. They're containment specialists. I'd already guessed that. She kept going. The being below, it is not a prisoner in the way you think. The restraints were placed long ago after events linked to early underground detonations. Events like what? She didn't answer. Or maybe she didn't have the words. One of the medics, the one with the shaved head, stepped closer. He clearly heard enough to join in. His tone stayed professional, but his eyes carried something else. Fatigue, maybe guilt. The entity regulates something deeper, he said. We don't fully understand it. Pressure, movement, some kind of environmental balance. When we tried to remove it decades ago, things became unstable, I asked. So it's a guardian. He paused before answering. That's one interpretation. Then why restrain it? Because we were afraid of what would happen if it moved freely. He tapped his wrist device. But these last months, the restraints have begun failing. Human presence worsens it. Visual focus worsens it. And we've been walking around staring at everything I said. Cross nodded. If it notices too many of us, it reacts. Not hostile, just present. And that's enough to shake the tunnels. My stomach sank. So why keep sending us down? Because we need stability readings, she said. And the entity responds differently depending on formation. We need consistent data to plan withdrawal. Withdrawal containment is no longer sustainable. The medic said, we're preparing to shut down the lower sectors, but we have to do it in stages. A sudden absence of humans might trigger a different reaction. So we're feeding at a controlled amount of people, Harlan said behind me. I didn't know he'd walked up. He looked angry, not loud angry. Quiet angry. No, Cross said, we're preventing collapse. I stared at her. Are my men in danger? Her silence told me everything. Before I could push further, the elevator chimed. No one had pressed it. The doors slid open. The display screen flickered through numbers, levels we knew, levels we didn't. Then it stopped on a symbol. Delta, not a number, the same symbol from the strange tunnel signs, the one that wasn't on any map. The medic stiffened. The shaved head one whispered, "It's ready." Cross's face went pale. We weren't scheduled to go lower today. The elevator hummed. The door stayed open. It felt like the whole tunnel held its breath. I stepped forward. "What's down there?" Cross said. "The core chamber." The medic added, "Where it is held." Harlan looked at me. "We going down, Sarge?" I didn't want to. Every instinct said no. But the site wasn't giving us a choice. Something below wanted an audience. And if this was a stability shift, ignoring it could mean worse. Cross met my eyes. "If we don't go, it escalates on its own." That was enough. I turned to the squad. Gear check, helmets down, weapons holstered. No one stares at anything unless I say. They nodded, nervous, silent. I wrote one last line in my notebook before stepping in. Delta level just called the elevator itself. The doors closed behind us. Whatever waited below wasn't sleeping anymore. I checked everyone's gear before we stepped into the elevator. Not a pep talk, not hero stuff, just the basics. Chambered rounds, tight straps, helmet lights off, radios on low, strict discipline. I told them, "Keep your eyes down. No staring into anything, no sudden moves, stay close." Nobody argued. The elevator started dropping the second the door shut. No button pressed, no delay, just a smooth descent, smoother than anything mechanical. It didn't rattle, didn't jerk, felt guided, directed. Ortega said, "This thing isn't following any level marker." He tapped his radio like he needed something normal to touch. The temperature changed fast, colder with every second, not drafty cold, clean cold. The kind that dried your throat. My breath came out sharper. Miller hugged his rifle against his chest even though he wasn't supposed to. Harlan's breathing got heavier, sweat on his forehead even in the cold. His eyes kept darting to the corners. "You good?" I asked. "Doesn't feel right," he said. "Feels like being watched from below." I felt it too, but I kept quiet. Cross stood near the panel, stiff hands behind her back like parade rest, trying to pretend this was planned. The medics didn't pretend. All three held their cases tight, their eyes were down, their shoulders tense. One kept glancing at his wrist device. The hum rose and fell like it was reacting to the elevator's movement. When we slowed, no one said a word. The display panel above the door showed nothing, just a blank field. Then it flashed a single mark. Delta, same symbol from the signs. The doors opened. Cold air blew in. Clean, too clean, like it had been scrubbed through something unnatural before reaching us. We stepped out into a wide hall. Not concrete, not old white surfaces, smooth corners rounded. The lights overhead were bright but aimed toward the floor, forcing our eyes down. I said, "On me." And the squad tightened around the medics. The floor had guidelines, thin gray strips that seemed built into the material, not painted, not taped, part of the structure. Cross said, "Follow the lane, no deviation." We didn't argue. The hall led to a checkpoint that looked like decontamination lanes. 3 narrow channels separated by waist-high barriers. Not built for machines, not built for people either. Taller, wider restraint brackets lined the sides, not shaped for human wrists. Ortega stared at one bracket and muttered, "That isn't for us." "Eyes down," I said. We moved through. My boots echoed soft, too soft, like the floor absorbed sound. Beyond the lanes was a long chamber with observation windows on each side, thick glass reinforced, fogged slightly on the inside like they'd been exposed to temperature shifts for years. Behind them sat more restraints, bigger ones, floor anchors, bent metal, nothing labeled. Miller whispered. Something broke out of those. I didn't disagree. The medics stopped near a small console. The shaved head one said, "From here on, keep helmets angled down. Do not look straight ahead unless told. If you feel your focus shifting, close your eyes," I asked. "Focus on what?" he said. "The mind tries to track movement it shouldn't." That wasn't comforting. We kept moving. The tunnel narrowed again before opening to another wide space large enough to fit a vehicle. White walls, silver rails in the ceiling. The cold air made my fingers numb. My radio crackled once. Ortega's mother's voice came through for half a word before cutting off. He froze. "Sarge, did you hear?" "No," I said fast. "Keep moving." He swallowed hard and stayed close. Miller jerked suddenly like something brushed his shoulder. "I saw movement," he whispered, "just for a second. On the left. Something low, you look at it," I asked. No, his voice shook. Didn't dare. Good. I didn't want to know what he almost saw. Harlan moved like he was walking through a funeral home. Slow, controlled, eyes down, sweat dripping even though his hands trembled from the cold. "You all right?" I said. "Everything feels wrong," he muttered. "Walls too quiet, air too clean, like something's breathing around us without sound." He wasn't wrong. We reached a heavy door at the far end. No handle, no keypad, just a seamless surface with a narrow slot that glowed faintly. The medic stopped. One medic said, "This is the controlled zone." "Controlled? How?" I asked. He didn't answer. Cross stepped forward, raised her strange watch, and held the dark plate near the glowing slot. The line across it brightened. The door split open quietly, the panels sliding sideways into grooves I couldn't see. Inside was colder, wider. The ceiling arched high. Lights ran along the edges of the floor, forcing our eyes downward again. We stepped in. Restraints lined the sides, not metal now, something else. Smooth, curved, built into the walls. Some were empty. Some had marks on them, scoring, indentations, shapes pressed deep into the material. I felt a slow vibration, not under my boots. In the air, like the room itself tensed, the medics kept moving with their heads down. They guided us toward the far end where thick, reinforced glass looked into a larger space. A chamber so big the lights didn't reach the far corners. Only the center was bright enough to see. Cross said, "Do not look directly ahead, keep your heads angled." We did, but peripheral vision doesn't lie. Through the glass I saw a silhouette. It shifted when I tried to fix my eyes on it. Not fast, not hostile, just wrong. My mind couldn't hold the shape. One moment tall, one moment narrow, like the outline didn't match what the brain expected, so it blanked out parts of it. I forced my gaze down to the floor again. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. Miller whispered, "I can't make sense of it, don't try," I said. The shaved head medic spoke behind us. "It doesn't like direct attention. The mind tries to resolve it, that causes stress for it and for you." I nodded but didn't trust myself to speak. The vibration grew stronger for a moment, my teeth buzzed. Ortega covered his ears and said, "Make it stop." Then it eased. Cross walked toward the console near the glass. Her hands shook. The medics joined her, placing their cases on the table. They opened them carefully. Inside were not medical tools, more like clamps, wires, strange rods, nothing familiar. The shaved head medic said, "It has sensed the shift above. The restraints are loosening on their own. We need to verify stability," Harlan muttered. "Feels like it's verifying us too." He wasn't wrong. The vibration pulsed again. The lights overhead dimmed slightly, then steadied. Cross turned to me. "Sergeant, keep your men steady. No sudden movements. If it reacts to fear, the chamber might destabilize. Fear or panic takes us. Then we're screwed. Control it," I ordered. "Stay sharp." We held formation. I tilted my head enough to catch the silhouette again at the edge of my vision. It seemed closer than before, but maybe that was just my nerves. The shape refused to settle. My brain pushed parts of it away like it was skipping a frame. The medics worked in silence. They placed rods into small ports along the glass barrier. The rods pulsed with faint light. They checked their device. The hum rose, then dropped. The shaved head medic said quietly, "It knows we're close. It's adjusting." I kept my gaze down, adjusting to what? Human presence, which meant the logs were right. We weren't the watchers, we were the disturbance. Another vibration rolled through. Heavier, slower, not angry, just aware. The medic placed his hand on the glass and said, "Almost done." Then something inside the chamber shifted. Not the silhouette, the air. A pressure shift like a giant exhale. Miller almost panicked. "Sarge, I got you," I said. "Hold," Cross spoke up. "We're near the threshold. Once readings stabilize, we pull back, but the rods pulsed again, brighter this time." The medic stared at his device. "It's inviting us further." Cross's eyes widened. That wasn't expected. The silhouette moved, or maybe my brain only thought it did. I stepped back on instinct. My men followed. The vibration tightened like something bracing. I forced myself to breathe slow. "Lieutenant, we need to leave." Cross hesitated. The medic said, "If we don't follow protocol now, the next reaction could be worse." I met Harlan's eyes. He was pale but steady. He gave the smallest nod. I turned to Cross, "Make the call." She looked at the glass one more second, then she said, "We go deeper." I didn't like it, but something below wanted us there, and the tunnel felt like it was waiting. We moved past the reinforced glass into the chamber itself. The door behind us sealed with a quiet thud. No lock noise, no mechanism clicking, just final. The kind of sound that told you there was no easy way out. The air inside was colder than anywhere else in the facility, clean to the point it hurt to breathe. My teeth felt numb, my throat tight. The lights were faint strips along the floor, pushing our eyes downward. Every instinct screamed to look up to see what stood around us, but I kept my stare on my boots. The space was massive, too wide for any normal underground room. Nothing blasted, nothing carved by machines. The walls curved, smooth with etch markings worn flat like fingers had dragged across them for decades. Some of the lines were cracked, others filled with sealant that didn't match any material I knew. The vibration deepened. Not shaking, not noise, just pressure. Like the world under our feet shifted slightly to make room for us. Cross said, "Stay controlled, no direct focus." The medics spread out, taking positions around the chamber, placing rods into narrow ports in the floor. Each rod glowed faintly. The silhouette stood near the far end. I didn't look at it head-on, just caught it in the corner of my vision. My brain kept losing pieces of it. Couldn't hold the shape. It wasn't invisible. It just refused to settle. Like my eyesight didn't have the right framework. Then something pressed against my thoughts. Not words, not speech, just meaning, a push, a direction. Images hit me in flashes. Underground detonations. Massive blasts echoing through rock. Pressure waves slamming into something deeper, something old. Cracks opening, something shifting awake. Humans panicking and building restraints, not out of cruelty but fear. I staggered. Ortega grabbed my vest. "Sarge, I'm fine," I said, though my head pounded. The medics worked faster. The hum from their device synced with the pulses of vibration. I realized the thing in the chamber wasn't lashing out. It was communicating, not friendly, not hostile, just showing us what happened. Harlan muttered, "It's been here longer than us." He wasn't wrong. Another flash hit me. Workers digging in the 50s, finding tunnels that didn't match the blasting charts, finding markings carved long before the site existed, finding a chamber shaped with intention. Then a presence inside it, alive, a guardian of something deeper, something pushing upward, something humans didn't want to face, so they restrained the guardian instead. They built the site around it, lied about what the facility was for, kept it pinned because they didn't know how to manage anything else. Miller trembled at my elbow. "Sarge, what is it saying?" I didn't know how to answer. "It wants balance," I said eventually. "It's holding something down." Cross heard me. "Don't engage with it," she warned. Wrecked only, too late. The thing pushed again. Harder this time, not pain, just presence. Images of the restraints tightening, cracks spreading through deeper rock, humans adding more welds, more anchors, thinking they were stopping a threat. But all they were doing was choking the one thing keeping the underground stable. The medics exchanged quick looks. The shaved head one said, "Pressure is rising again. We're close to a threshold." He tapped his device. "If we don't act now, the lower levels could collapse." "Act how?" I asked. Cross finally met my eyes, her voice steady but thin. "The restraints need to be released." Miller sucked in a breath. "We're freeing that thing." "No," the medic said. "We're allowing it to move. There's a difference." Harlan glared at him. "Feels like the same thing." Cross said, "If it stays restrained, everything fails. The readings are clear. It's holding something down, something worse than it." That was the first honest thing she'd said since we arrived. The silhouette shifted again. My mind tried to track it. I closed my eyes to stop the nausea. The meaning behind the movement pressed hard. Less like communication, more like urging, not asking to be freed, insisting that staying bound would end badly. I thought of the log's containment, stability decreasing. Human presence increases strain, avoid direct exposure. All of it pointed the same direction. The shaved head medic touched a rod. "Once we pull these restraints, begin withdrawal." "Then what?" I asked. "Then we clear the chamber and hope it finishes stabilizing before the next pressure cycle." Not a plan I liked, but the alternative felt worse. I looked at my men. Ortega pale, Miller shaking. Harlan breathing hard but focused. They were terrified, but they trusted me. I exhaled slow. "Do it." Cross nodded to the medic. He pulled the final rod. The chamber changed instantly. The lights dimmed to half strength. The vibration dropped for a second, then returned steadier, like a heartbeat finding a rhythm. The restraints along the walls retracted, not mechanical, not hydraulic. They slid back smoothly into the structure like a living thing folding itself inward. The silhouette leaned or maybe stepped, but I refused to look directly. The movement wasn't hostile, more like stretching after being held still too long. The pressure in the air eased. The medics backed away fast. "It's moving into place," one said. "What place?" Harlan asked. "The deeper conduit," the medic answered, "where it belonged before we forced containment." A low pulse rolled through the chamber, not dangerous, just decisive, like a signal that the shift was complete. The silhouette drifted. No other word fit. And the chamber lights flickered once. Then the entity moved deeper into the darkness beyond the visible edge. The walls around the opening began to reshape, closing behind it, sealing. No alarms, no violence, no collapse, just silence. Cold, final, perfectly controlled. Cross exhaled for the first time in minutes. "It's done." The medics gathered their rods. One checked the device. Stability rising, levels near normal. I felt the pressure fade from my skull. My breathing steadied. The chamber lights brightened a fraction. The vibration dropped to a faint pulse, a calm one. It was over, cross motion to the exit. "We leave now." We backed through the doors. The chamber sealed the moment we crossed the threshold. Smooth, quiet, like it never wanted to open again. As the elevator doors slid shut and we began rising, I wrote a quick line in my notebook with shaking hands. We didn't free it. We just stopped choking it. The elevator took us up without a sound. No vibration, no pressure shifts, no strange clicks in the radios, just a clean ride to the normal levels. Like the place finally stopped paying attention to us. When the doors opened, the hall looked the same as always, peeling paint, old warning signs, scuffed floors, but it felt different. Like the tension that lived in the walls was gone. We walked without talking. Even Harlan stayed quiet. The medics led the way, cases in hand, calm again, too calm. Cross kept her eyes ahead. No explanation. No orders, just moving. At the main junction, one of the medics said, "Escort complete." Simple, flat, like we had just carried equipment, not walked into something older than the test site itself. They split off toward a side corridor, a restricted one. We weren't invited. Cross turned to me. "Your team is done for the cycle. Return topside." That was it. No thanks. No recognition, no details. Her face looked empty, like the last 24 hours burned out whatever expression she had left. We rode the elevator to the surface checkpoint. The guards scanned our badges like everything was normal. Trucks idled near the gate. The sun hit my face, and for the first time in days I felt like I could breathe air that belonged to the world. No alarms were sounding, no officers running around, no briefings, no emergency crews, just a normal day on the test site. You'd never guess we'd walked next to something that kept the ground itself from tearing open. Back at barracks, I filed my written report like always. Log times, procedures, personnel actions, all by the book. Next morning, my report came back through the inbox slot. Half the pages missing. The staple holes were still there. Clean, empty, no note, no corrections. Someone just removed the parts they didn't want recorded. I didn't ask where they went. I didn't ask who read them. I just tucked what remained into the cabinet where I kept the rest of my deployment paperwork. Cross didn't speak to me after that. She left the site within a day. I saw her boarding a black sedan near the admin building. She didn't look back. Rumor was she'd been reassigned. Nobody said where. Medical Team Alpha was gone, too. Rooms cleared, cases removed, their badges erased from the check-in logs. When Ortega checked the radio control sheets, their call signs no longer existed. The lower sector, the one tied to the Delta level, shut down. Cement trucks rolled in. Workers poured fill into the old access tunnel. Fresh concrete, thick and gray, sealing everything under tons of weight. They stamped a new sign over the gate. Unstable, no entry. We all knew that was a lie. The place wasn't unstable anymore. They just didn't want anyone going back. The official narrative settled fast. Equipment fault. Minor seismic anomaly. Routine closure for safety. Clean, simple, boring. Exactly what the government liked. I didn't speak up. Neither did my squad. We did our jobs, finished our rotation, and rotated out to new posts like nothing special happened. But at night, sleep wasn't clean. I'd wake up without knowing why. Hearing that old clean air in my head, seeing downward lights in the dark, feeling that pressure shift behind my ribs. Not fear, just memory. Heavy and steady like a hand that never really left. Miller said he dreamed of the restraints empty now, folding back into the walls. Ortega told me he still heard faint clicks in radios even on regular channels. Harlan never talked about it. He just stared at the ground sometimes, like trying to feel if it was steady. Months went by, seasons changed. The test site ran drills like always. The concrete over the old sector hardened. Admin staff cycled out. Nobody spoke of Delta level again. But some nights I'd sit alone on the outside steps after lights out, notebook in hand, flipping through what pages hadn't been taken. I traced the notes about the vibrations, the false corridors, the medic's warnings, the chamber, the silhouette I never fully saw. Every detail was real, but everything around it had been erased so easily. That was the part that stuck with me more than anything we saw underground. The silence afterward, the way the world moved on without a tremor like it never happened. Years passed. I stayed in until my retirement, kept my notebooks in a locked drawer, never spoke of the test site to anyone outside the squad, didn't need the questions, didn't need the looks. One year on a long drive west, I took a detour and stopped at an overlook east of the old range. The wind was sharp. The sand blew in thin sheets across the flats. The land looked empty, just desert and dead brush and a long stretch of nothing. But standing there, I felt it again. Deep under the ground, faint, steady. That quiet pulse, not threatening, just present, holding the line. I stood there a while. Didn't look down long, didn't stare, just listened. Then I walked back to my truck and drove off. Some things don't want attention. Some things work better when you leave them alone. And I learned long ago not to stare at anything that stares back from under the earth. So that's the end of our video. If you made it this far, make sure to hit like and subscribe. It really helps the channel and it's free. And if you want more terrifying encounters like this one, check out the other videos on screen right now. Thanks for watching and stay safe out there. See you soon.